Thank you for tuning in. This is Architects of Imagination, where we talk to the brilliant minds behind your favorite video games. I am DJ, and today I'm very pleased to announce my old boss, Alex St. John.
Hey DJ, it's good to see you again. We
Yeah,
we we got old. At least you still have good hair.
thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, it has been a long time. I was a much younger man when we last saw each other. I worked for you at Wild Tangent. I think I started in 1999 through about 2005. So, man,
Another century ago.
I know, man, crazy. Um, and I just wanted to open by thanking you for basically, kickstarting my career. This was the first sort of proper. I'd worked a little bit in computer graphics stuff ahead of that, but this was my first proper game job, and I, went on to do other exciting things after Wild Tangent. So, thank you very much.
Hey, you're a very talented guy. I knew you were going to go places. It was fun working with you.
Yeah, thank you. And I have very fond memories of my time at Wild Tangent.
Good.
It was, I would describe it as one of the happier times of my life. The people that I met, the people that I got to work with, you and Max and Brent and Radu and just so many to this day friends came out of that place. Um, Thank you for. I remember, those of us who were imports that came in from other states or whatever. You'd
Yeah,
have us to your house for Thanksgiving if we didn't have
that's
family in time.
right. You guys used to, oh, I remember that. That tradition got carried forward to other startups too. Yeah, I remember I always had you guys over for the holidays. That was fun.
Yeah, so thank you very much. That was it was a blast to work there. I had a great time. I learned so much. Like you don't know what you don't know until you're you
Oh,
get you get in there, and then
man, did we learn how to CEO the hard way there? Boy, good grief.
I remember when I was scheduled to interview there, someone had sent me a copy of a book that had been recently written about you called Renegades of the Empire. I read it largely on the flight on my way to the interview. And man, your story is amazing, phenomenal, legendary. Holy shit. You've
There
done
have
some
been a
kick
few other
stuff.
books since then too, actually.
Yeah.
None of them actually ever get it right, which is unfortunate, but you know, some good
Well, what
stories.
give us a little there. What is something that like you wish that they would do right that
Well,
they haven't
when a book
entirely?
author, they're one, they're usually a journalist, so they're not that technical, and two, they're trying to take a good story, and the stories about me are very nerdy, so they kind of focus on the more sensationalist, funnier things I do, and kind of forget to mention that I built a whole lot of technology I'm really proud of. So my greatest frustration is I go, hey, those are funny, nutty stories. Don't get me wrong, I did a lot of crazy stuff, but I did build a lot of technology I'm really proud of, and I kind of would wish that that would make it into the history book alongside the talking Bill Gates into wearing a trench coat and shooting up a bunch of monsters in Doom. I just that's a good story. Don't get me wrong, but I also made the operating system tech. I wrote code.
Yeah, yeah, and let's get into some of those things. I mean, you were pivotal in the development of DirectX itself,
Yeah.
which functionally has fueled the entire PC gaming industry. Would not be what it
I
is
am part
today.
of every game you play on every console today now. Yes, indeed. I started the team, so it was myself. I had the job of game evangelist, and I of course sucked in a couple of my closest crazy friends to go build it all.
Yeah, the Xbox itself may not exist were it
Yep.
not for
It's
what you
the
guys put.
DirectX box. I
Yeah.
drew the logo, although the logo is so politically incorrect that Microsoft has had a revisionist history for it in order to make it okay. So the original, if you look this up on Google, the
Okay.
original DirectX logo, the project, the secret code name for DirectX was called the Manhattan Project. And it was inspired by a 1980s sci-fi show called what was it? Not Shall We Play a Game? What was that game? War Games. Um, and so in the AI that starts World War III in it, has the famous quote, "Shall we play a game?" So the logo was a nuclear blast, and the DirectX logo was a radiation symbol. And
Okay.
that's what the first T-shirts had, was just a radiation symbol. And we made DirectX with no permission. We just did it at Microsoft as just because we made stuff for the hell of it, and nobody would listen to us. So we said, "Fuck it, we're going to build it." Pardon my language for the kids there. Um, so we started the DirectX project kind of with no charter, and I drew the logo. And it was originally a radiation symbol. We had these scandalous Manhattan Project, Oppenheimer kind of themed stuff for the early developers. And of course, when it became huge and everybody, went crazy, Microsoft PR had a word with us about the logo. They're like, "Well, the radiation symbol, it's a little bit, maybe you could, get rid of that." And so I added a leg to it to make it an X. And it was
Really?
like fans. It looked like a fan blade, right? And the funny thing is, there's this whole fantasy story that is total BS. That's the Xbox glowing green X because they had a green highlighter pen when they drew it. The DirectX logo was always radioactive green, and not a single person who worked on Xbox didn't remember that. They just made sure that they told a different story to the press. So the X on the Xbox is because it was called the Manhattan Project, and the early DirectX SDKs, we wanted to, put the consoles that originated mostly in Japan out of business. So hence the nuclear theme, and it was carried
Oh
forward to
man.
the Xbox with the glowing green radiation symbol on the cover. So
Oh wow.
maybe a little politically incorrect, but we were young and stupid then.
Yeah,
Now
I
we're
mean,
old and stupid. Don't
we're
get me
we're
wrong.
we're young. I don't. Yeah, I guess we can't claim young and stupid still, but now we're older and
Now we
stupid.
got no excuses for it. No, none at all.
That's amazing. I did not know that. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And so from there you went on to. I remember reading. By the way, great read. I highly recommend it. Renegades of the Empire for anyone. It's super fascinating to read. You ended up leaving Microsoft and founding Wild Tangent, and I didn't know this at the time that I joined, but from you or someone had explained that like you guys were working on getting like DirectX 3D rendering going on inside of Internet Explorer, and there was these like hidden codes in there that
Oh
could
yeah.
enable it.
You may not remember this, but I made Dave. It was David Vincent and Mike DeMond made Google Maps, and we sold it to Google. So the earliest we started out after I left Microsoft, I'd started the Chrome project, the Chrome Effects browser project at Microsoft, which is a story that has not been told and wasn't relevant until this era. But I started a project to put DirectX in the browser. Remember, Microsoft was trying to kill Netscape back then and make a super browser, beat Netscape. And I got the charter from Microsoft to build a browser that had so just incredibly media powered browser. And prototyped it, and it was called the Chromium browser. Before there was ever a Google Chrome, by the way. And that browser turned into a major project. And the guys who built DirectX with me went on to build this incredibly powerful DirectX enabled media browser. But Microsoft was very, very political, and we were very naughty boys for going and innovating without permission. So we had a lot of enemies at the time, and we were afraid that we would not get to ship this media super browser we were building before we got stopped by politics. So the prototype that I built with a couple engineers who were friends, we slipped into, I think it was IE4. It was IE3 or IE4, undocumented, and it's in there to this day if you go find an old copy of IE. And the APIs were undocumented, such that should an accident happen to the Chrome project that we were building, like an unfortunate DOJ trial that gets the whole thing buried and forgotten by history because Microsoft thought better of crushing Netscape publicly after the government threatened to break them up. So so I had left Microsoft, and then Eric Engstrom, who had started, and Craig Eisler, who had started DirectX with me, were running this project at Microsoft, and they wanted help producing the first demos that would use it. So Wild Tangent was founded as a consulting firm just to produce demos for this Chrome super browser we were building. And the first demo I made, they said, we want something that's not games. And so I did what today is called Google Maps, but
Yeah.
we called it Maptastic, and it was streaming, zooming mapping that used ran over a modem, and it was something that a browser could not do without all this kind of DirectX acceleration. And that was the big demo for the Chrome, what became called the Chrome effect. Microsoft wanted to name it the Chrome browser, and Microsoft legal said you can't trademark a generic name, so it ended up being called Chrome effects. Um, and so Wild Tangent started building those demos, and then the DOJ trial came. Microsoft, they were about to ship Chrome Effects as this new super browser, and they said, oh crap, we're going to get broken up by the government. And they buried it, canceled the project. And one night I got the note that, come to the office and get all your stuff before your card keys die. And so everybody at Wild Tangent who was working in my basement at my house, we all ran to our Microsoft office and grabbed all our furniture and computers and rolled it out of the thing before our card keys got cut off.
Oh man.
And that was the beginning of Wild Tangent, the online game publishing platform.
Awesome. Which is still around today. I hadn't really kept track of what Wild Tangent has been doing up to today. I'm looking at the website
Yeah,
right now.
Miguel, I think, still largely runs it. It was sold off. So I left in 2008 because it'd been a decade. So I'd sold my interest to go do other things, and then, other people ran it diligently into the ground, as far as I know.
Yeah. Awesome.
Subsequent leadership did not figure out how to stay on top of the world's largest online game platform that I left them.
Yeah, fuck. Um, sometimes so when I worked there, there was two sort of gaming divisions. There was the adver games where it was sort of work for hire, right? And that's kind of largely what I was doing. You know, Coke or Nike would hire us to do a soccer game or something like that. And then there was the sort of games to sell. Um, and one funny anecdote too from that time, to this day, sometimes I'll be at the GDC or something, and the topic will come up: who worked on the on like the worst rated thing or the funniest thing. Usually, I'll win that argument with I think we did and we did the Axe body spray
Oh God,
ad for a
yes.
game, Mojo Master,
Oh God, yes.
which was a hitting on women
It
card
was a
game.
hitting on women card game.
Oh,
And
so embarrassing.
well, now you're not an employee. I should tell you some of the HR meetings we had over. So so Bill Clifford, who now is in charge of Unreal Engine at Epic,
Yeah.
sold Max a multi-million-dollar advert game deal. He kind of wanted Magic the Gathering for hitting on chicks, sponsored by Axe deodorant, right? Like,
Right.
well, I guess we need the money, right? But the problem is they wanted, the sexy chicks that you were hitting on to be doing sexy things. And so we needed a mocap session, and Paul Steed, the famous, Quake artist, who was
I see
famous
where
for
this is going.
his animated girls work for us. So Paul was obviously going to be making all the naughty 3D dancing girls. And Paul, of course, said, well, I need mocap sessions. And so I said, there's no way that I'm letting Paul Steed go do mocap sessions with professional strippers or whatever, unsupervised. And we got to handle all this delicately because it's kind of a naughty rated R game. So remember Tanya who worked for us?
I do, yeah.
She was
Tanya
a
was great.
really funny producer. She's hilarious. She'd worked on Monty Python games. She's like everybody's mom, right? And so I go, Tanya, I got to ask you a favor. I need you to produce this Mojo game because there's going to be all this stuff going on, and I need somebody to camp on it, manage the HR. We need everybody to sign who's going to work on it, things saying, I know I'm going to be working on naughty things. Um, and I thought, she was going to roll her eyes and go, okay, Alexa, whatever, one for the team. But she was really excited about it. She thought Steed was hilarious because Steve was hilarious. And he was
Yeah.
hilarious in a totally X-rated way because he loved 3D animation and women's bodies, and he would not shut up about how to animate and model. He wrote books on it, right? And he would just go on and on about just shockingest stuff. He'd do it in front of customers. They thought he was hilarious. But
Oh man.
so he would take Tanya to LA to shoot these pole dancing scenes and so forth for the Axe deodorant commercial, and they'd have the strippers, and they're all mocap sessions. And the problem is, he goes, it's a big dark empty room with everywhere wearing bulbs and things, and he goes, I need furniture. They need a chair, they need a pole. So he'd make Tanya go and be the bench or the table or the chair or the pole. So she'd be in every scene holding something or being a prop that they were standing or dancing on or so forth.
Oh,
So she would
Steve,
come back
no,
from a day
no.
of being, yes, she would come
Oh
back from
no.
a day of being furniture. So it just every day we just go, thank you for doing this. Please, protect us from lawsuits, Tanya.
Oh
Um,
no.
but just the most hilarious stories of the antics she and Steed would get up to shooting that frickin' game.
Oh
Yeah, and then
man.
we had the Mojo Girls at E3, so they actually, just oh my, they hired models to play them all at E3 because, that was politically okay back then.
Yeah, times have changed. We've advanced a little bit,
Yeah,
thank goodness.
progress.
Yeah. And I'm glad to have more women in gaming. I'm glad to have been able to hire some at our company too. Like that to me, that's a necessity. It's important. But yeah, that was an era, wasn't it?
That was, remember most of the time I was trying to make Disney Kids Nintendo type games. That was really our theme, but man, there was a lot of money in that deal.
Yeah, Polar Bowler. Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I remember Carol too, one of our producers. She had just come from Disney too. She was just the sweetest.
Yeah.
She was great.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, One other funny story from our time there. I remember we had one kind of project out in Virginia at AOL, and me and a couple of the other guys had to fly out there for like 2 weeks on like a day's notice or something. And we did the project, and at the end, you and I forget who else kind of flew out to do the final presentation.
Yeah, it was a
And
big deal. We got the AOL AIM Instant Messenger game network deal, that one. Yeah.
yeah, killer. That's awesome.
Hmm.
Um, and I remember the fond memory. You right after the presentation, you kind of took us aside. The few of us who did this just sort of dropped our lives and just went out for 2 weeks. But you told us, thank you for everything you did on this. Thank you for coming out here on such short notice. Here's $1,000, and it was Halloween night, and in downtown DC. You gave us $1,000, but the condition was that we had to blow it that night.
Oh man, I was the best boss.
Yeah, you were pretty awesome. The sad learnings from me that night was I think I took it too literally. I think the gist was go have fun, but
Yeah.
I ended up like the bars. So downtown DC has this bar row, and everyone was out there. The lines were just crazy to get to the bar. So basically, just spent the whole evening in the in the line, like getting drinks for people and not like enjoying the night. So I fucked that
Dude,
one
I
up.
tried, man. You were such a
You can
company
lead a
full of
horse to
nerds.
water.
None of you had any game or knew how to have a good time. You had to be taught. Not only did you have to taught how to ship a game, but how to have a life.
Yeah.
Actually, you were one of the cool ones in that group, as I recall.
True. Yeah. Oh, thank you. And man, I learned so much at Wild Tangent. Like it was my first. I was there about 5 years. It was my first game job, and got to touch pretty much every like art discipline there is, from like
Yeah.
environments, UI, motion capture, character design, effects, outsource managing, art directing, pretty much
Yeah.
everything. And that kind of really well set me up for what I would go on to do afterwards, doing effects, which touches all these things, rigging and so yeah. Again, thank you for. my-
Well, thank you. I had a lot of fun working with you. I remember you were very talented. Yeah,
Thanks.
it was a good time. Good era.
Tell us what you've been up to. Let's take another little tangent. Now, excuse the pun. Uh, DirectX isn't the only big tech you've had a role in. We were just talking about another thing that is more apropos today, Chat GPT and some of the foundations under that. Talk about that a
Yeah,
little bit.
I've traveled strange paths that a lot of people don't know about because I'm very antisocial. I'm in my basement down here in the dark where I spend 99% of my life. Um, yeah, well, a funny thing happened a few years ago. I moved to New Zealand, where by strange courses I ended up starting a supercomputing consulting company to design some of the supercomputing architecture for the Square Kilometre Array telescope. Because, of course, it's going to be one of the world's largest GPU supercomputers that's designed to map all the matter in the universe. And it was a major scientific undertaking, and they had a bunch of academics and not somebody who actually knew how to program GPUs. So I ended up helping them with the design of a lot of the architecture. And the strange thing that happened was that I was very successful at a lot of the computer science side. But they said, there's 12 countries funding this thing, and 70 to 80% of the cost is just the electricity to run the supercomputers. Can you think of any way to do this kind of math with less power? And I said, well, I've got no experience at that. I'm an algorithm guy. But I said, what are you doing, and what consumes all the power? And it was all the storage, because GPUs in that era were I/O bound. You couldn't get data into them fast enough. Hard drives were slow, networks were slow. So the GPU, you handed a problem and go compute done, and then you're just waiting for it to copy the bits back to the hard drive or over the network. So I took a look at that and I go, well, I don't know anything about storage, but that's obviously the power problem. But, I got a notion. So I called up Jensen, CEO and founder of NVIDIA, who I've known since he founded NVIDIA. And I said, hey, I know you guys make supercomputers with Cray these days. Could you give me the drivers to the InfiniBand cards, the source code? Because I want to modify them to talk to NVMe drives directly. And so I made what is now called, NVIDIA calls it, I think, GPU Direct Storage, and Microsoft calls it the Direct Storage API and DirectX. And so I made modified NVIDIA drivers to talk straight to NVMe drives. And an NVIDIA GPU could do that at 9 to 12 gigabytes a second per GPU. And that was the I/O speed needed to train AI models with GPUs at a huge scale. Because the GPU was fast, but you had to churn through just massive volumes of data. So NVIDIA, after I gave them that driver code, they acquired Mellanox. And so the data center technology you need to train a massive AI using GPUs is actually this enormous storage fabric, which makes it possible to do it at the speed. And so the funny thing is, years later, after a stint in radio astronomy, Microsoft announces direct storage, which I'd made, but nobody at Microsoft knew that. They got it from NVIDIA. And it's on the Xbox. So I made another DirectX API 20 years later accidentally. Um,
Amazing.
yeah, it's funny. And then Nvidia bought Mellanox for like $7 billion, and so it's weird to live in this world where computers are coming to life on video game chips we made in the 90s, and the thing that made it possible to train them was the storage stuff I made for radio astronomy. So it's a very strange life to kind of see that unfold. And I've worked on other weird. So let's just be vague and say that supercomputing's become very relevant to lots of military and sci-fi applications. So I get called to work on some of the coolest stuff I'd never imagined getting to work on that I can't really talk about.
Wow.
Let's just say that you'd use a lot of GPUs to shoot down satellites and drones with laser beams. And ironically, we use Unreal Engine for that.
Get the fuck out of here, really?
Yeah, it's great. It's a great
Amazing.
career.
That is awesome. It's a luxury when someone is able to like make have your thumbprint on, humanity itself.
Yeah, my sweaty fingerprints all over everything.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. Well, and so recently, so I, moved back to the US, and I kind of got marooned during COVID, and I'd sold my company in New Zealand. So, I was like going, I'm going to play Call of Cthulhu with all my old gamer friends. So we played Call of Cthulhu in my basement for like 6 months straight. That was my startup therapy. And then COVID kind of spoiled all the fun. So, I was doing a lot of this consulting while I was doing COVID, during the COVID epidemic. And I kind of lost interest in the game industry because it had seemed very stagnant to me. Everybody there wasn't much innovation. Everybody pinned down their market niches and business models, and everything was very stratified. And I thought the game developers were very trapped in their various, channels of business models. So I didn't see a lot to interest me in the game business for a long time, for a lot of years. And then the funny thing happened during COVID, and I'll associate them arbitrarily, but it was the failure of Stadia and the success of Twitch kind of at the same time, side by side, that caught my attention. Because, when I built DirectX, it started out as video. We're using DirectX now for all the video conferencing stuff. This is Direct Show that I worked on, that all this is working on. Um, and you think of 3D engines, the reason we made the Direct 3D API is people were on modems, so you couldn't fit a video over a phone line. So you needed a big GPU on both ends and a tiny little stream of bits to play a multiplayer game. So from my point of view, Direct 3D was just type of a video codec for gaming. And I always imagined that a day would come when people had so much bandwidth in your home, you didn't need a big computer anymore. You just play it as video. And you and I have seen On Live came and go, and Gaikai came and went, and there were all these kind of attempts to deliver games as video. And I always, kind of sat on the sidelines and go, hey, I hope that works, but I don't actually believe the world's ready for it yet. And what I saw happen with Stadia was one of the most, from my point of view, really fascinating, because Google had this tremendous vision to go, we're just going to make games playable as video. And then instead of doing what you'd think Google should do with them, which is make them free and ad supported, they go, and we're just going to put a big paywall in front of them and charge the same price as though they were on a console, but in the cloud. And then we're really confused as to why that failed horribly. And right next to that, right, it's a terrible idea. You go, what was the point of putting games in the cloud if you weren't going to let them get played for free by everyone everywhere with any kind of input device? Why'd you have to put a paywall in front of that? And the truth was that the cost of putting a game in the cloud was so astronomical that they never would have made any money. If they made it free, they would have just lost billions overnight, the hosting costs. But right next door is Twitch TV. And the Twitch TV guys are just as dumb in another way, because they actually were just another kind of YouTube wannabe, except some chat. So we're going to be like YouTube, because the world needs another one of those, and we'll put chat on it. And in 2012, as they're kind of a struggling YouTube wannabe, Open Broadcast Studio is open sourced out of the blue. And streaming is born, not because of anything Twitch did, but because Open Broadcast Studio is open source. So guys like you and everybody, the gamers, are going, yeah, I'm going to put on my own game show. And that'll turn out to be people who like to play games, love to sit around watching each other play games. and we'll put it on Twitch. And so over at Twitch, they're like, we're the most brilliant business people ever, because we now have millions of people just sitting with their hands in their laps watching people play esports games and talk about it because of Open Broadcast Studio. And today they're generating $3.6 billion a year in revenue at a loss. They can't turn a profit because the cost of hosting that much video exceeds the value of all the advertising. So we better sell to Amazon for $1 billion in 2014 because we'll never turn a profit. And Amazon, they can use all their excess unsold cycles for this. So they end up an Amazon company. And yet, for the first time in history, because every time you'd have a conversation about, I'm going to deliver games as video, there's always that person who goes, but what about the latency? Right? Yeah. And you go, how about 100% latency? How about hardcore gamers being thrilled to play not at all, to have a game with no interactivity at all, you're just going to watch it, and that's going to be a hit. And that's what Twitch was. And I was like going, Stadia fails, and Twitch, that succeeds, and you can't even play. And you go, you know what's fascinating about that? Is both of those are stupid ideas. The actual right ideas in the middle, and nobody realized it. So I got a bug. So we're just locked in the basement. I'm just video conferencing my friends going, hey, you guys want to make something cool with me? So this was our COVID lockdown hobby. I said, let's make something where you can Twitch stream and play. So I ended up founding the original name Playcast Inc. because EA used to own it. But I got Playcast Inc. and we're at Playcast.io. And the technology that we've been building in the basement for 2 years is on the sites in alpha, which means it's not flawless. But it basically is open broadcast studio that lets you stream yourself playing a game. It's integrated with OBS, so if you're a Twitch streamer, it already works, except that your mouse, keyboard, and gamepad works. So you can literally play with other people as video over the internet. And it's peer to peer. You just put it on your home computer. I can send you a link, and you can play my games on my machine from 1,000 miles away with your game controller. Nothing to install on the client side. It just works in a browser. So I like Parsec a lot, but you got to have a client on both sides. Or Steam Remote Play, you have to have their app here, and you have to have a client and an account and all that stuff. And all of that, it gets in the way of people just playing. So what I built is a new kind of streaming platform that includes the play part. And so I'm hoping that not only is that really successful, but it's a deliberate success because it's actually what those guys were trying to do that just didn't, get the ideas right.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been Twitch streaming my my D&D games.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Twitch is, again, it kills me because you go, what's funny is this is the best accidental idea ever. I never would have thought, I never got said, yeah, gamers would love to just watch each other play, and that'll be really
Yeah,
awesome.
I
I
never would have
wouldn't have
thought.
thought of that, right?
Amazing.
Everybody's surprised. Even Twitch, of everybody who's Twitch, they're like, hell, we're rich. Quick, take credit for being geniuses and sell to Amazon. Because, whoops, thank you, Open Broadcast Studio.
Yeah, OBS is great.
Yeah.
Um, so and Playcast, your website's up. You can download it right now. I'm looking
Yeah,
at
it's
the.
a live alpha. Again, still, literally, it's just a team of 4 of us cranking away. I hope I can open source it because, ironically, who encouraged me to do this because I was just consulting on some of those projects I was talking about, which pays a lot better than being an entrepreneur. And Bing Gordon, the founder of Electronic Arts, reached out to me. And the funny thing about one of the founders of Electronic, obviously it was Trip Hawk and so forth, but he's a lot older than I am. So back when I was a kid, EA was epic. It was the coolest game company, game studio
Yeah.
around. And I used to take pride in ripping the security off their Commodore 64 games so I could share them for $1 with my little friends. I was very naughty back then, but I was a huge fan of Electronic Arts. And I'd known about Bing for years. I'd never met him, and it turned out he wanted to acquire Wild Tangent. He'd actually led EA's acquisition offer for Wild Tangent, and I had never known that. We just got a letter over transom going, "Hey, we'll give you a few hundred million for the company." Um, and I said, "No, we're worth billions. Hell no, right?" Um, but years later he said he loved Fate, one of the games that Travis Baldry and our studios produced, one of the best games, downloadable games ever. And
Yeah.
he said he's just a huge fan, and he followed my career. And he said, I've got lots of money and I'm a VC. What do you want to do? And I said, well, I got this thing I've been doing with friends while we've been consulting. He said, well, if I put some money in, you guys want to quit the consulting thing and just make it happen? And so, I've ironically, one of my childhood heroes is the investor in playcasting.
All right.
How cool is that?
That's pretty rad.
Yeah, it's really amazing. So like I said, it's just in alpha. It's got some bugs, but all you got to do is download it on your PC, and you can serve your games off your own computer, peer to peer. No cloud required. Send your friends a link, invite them, and just say, "Here, come try my Steam games." And I integrated it with the Open Broadcast Studio camera. So if you're a streamer, you can literally stream yourself playing with friends as video. And if you want to invite your audience to play, you just find email them a link and say, "Here, click this and bring a gamepad," and you can jump right into any gamepad-enabled game. So it's give it a try, and of course it needs polish. We're working on the UI, but I'm hoping it's a big revolution. And like I said, if it gets popular and takes off, I'm going to try to get it open sourced because I think Open Broadcast Studio is one of the coolest open source projects. I'd love to get one of those on my tombstone before I leave this mortal coil.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping I made the next cool thing in streaming, if you will.
Well, good luck. That is amazing. I'm gonna check it out right after we're done here. Before we go, I want to bend your ear a little bit about entrepreneurship. You've started several companies. I am on my first. One thing I remember from just hearing from you back in the day at Wild Tangent that it's kind of stuck in the back of my head was, Wild Tangent had a few things going on. There was like advergame department. There was games that we were, licensing and downloading and coins for and stuff. But there was also the tech behind it. And I remember you talking about how, a services company, if you're just work for hire, your valuation is kind of capped at a certain amount,
Yeah,
right?
you're worth
So it
some
is
multiple of your head count.
exactly right. So having some sort of like tech behind it is something that then sort of unlocks another level. Um, tell us, just rant for a minute about entrepreneurship, just things that people starting up companies. I don't know, things that
You know,
you've learned
one
along the way.
one of the things I hate about all other entrepreneurs, especially the Silicon Valley culture, is they do nothing but say positive things and how, brilliant and visionary they are. And you never hear any of them talk about all the stupid mistakes they made. And it really frustrates me because I know all those people and I know the stupid stuff they did and I know the stupid things I did. And the sad thing is that anybody watching entrepreneurship in Silicon Valley from the media, from the outside, would think that, Mark Zuckerberg, these guys are just born geniuses and spring straight into visionary success and everything goes according to some grand scheme they had. And I think that's often probably very discouraging and so I know a lot of people who have naive notions about what it's like to be an entrepreneur, and when they discover it's something else and they hit some hardship, they give up, because they just nobody told them it's actually always hard, and all those guys went through some enormous trials to get wherever they're going. So the funny thing is, one of the things I try to do is I go, I'm going to tell you the dumbest things I did because that's actually the most useful thing I could do for anybody, and there are a lot of them. And I was, a fortunate, weird beneficiary because remember, Wild Tangent was started in the crazy .com era. So I came out of Microsoft famous as this kind of reckless, wizard who'd made DirectX and turned Microsoft into a game company. And the VCs were lavishing me with VC money, which again turns out to be a huge mistake. It sounds great. Thank you for millions in free cash. And if you have never been a CEO and never tried to run a startup, never had to lay off people because your bank account's low, you just think that money comes easy and you just burn it. And so I was raised in an era where everybody just burned their money. And then the .com market crashed. They all went out of business, and they crawled away silently, and you never heard from any of them. They were all bragging and talking to the press about how brilliant they were, and then you never heard of any of them again. So it was a very and Wild Tangent survived that because I'm really tenacious. That's probably one of the number one things I would tell an entrepreneur is I go, you know what? I know I've got a high IQ, the big brain is really cool to have, and it really gets you into a lot of trouble. And the thing that always gets me out of it is the work ethic and the relentlessness. And so my experience is the founders who really make it, their number one attribute, regardless of where their IQ's at, is usually their relentlessness. And so I said, I screw up constantly make mistakes. The one thing I never do is give up and crawl away. And the result is, ironically, always success. Maybe not success always on other people's terms. I'm kind of a strange guy, so maybe you notice I love the technology maybe more than I love wealth. So I've never considered myself to be exceptional at business as I've been exceptional at innovation. But there are definitely people who are just all about getting the billions, and the ones who are tenacious, they do eventually get them. So one of the number one things I'd say is I had a lot of friends. I knew all kinds of people who were entrepreneurs, and the number one thing that would end their entrepreneurship was their own self defeat. They
Give up.
maybe justifiably hard, and they'd give up. They'd quit. That was it. And the people who didn't do that, they usually ended up rich eventually. Maybe it was a long haul, but they'd do it. right? Like I remember the Roblox founder, David Bazuski, or whatever his name was. It's been,
Yeah.
I remember seeing that game and going, "Oh, I got to get that in my network. Let's go find him." And boy, I never thought that guy would have made it. Just, oh,
Yeah.
so the minefield he crawled over to build Roblox boggles the mind. Um, and that was the kid. You remember Arctic's Adventure Quest? Were you around for that guy?
I don't think I recall that. No.
It was art. So the website, I think they're still around. Arctic's Adventure Quest. It was an 18-year-old kid in the Louisiana swamp who made the crappiest little flash kind of RPG you could imagine with a few of his high school friends. Uh, they're very uneducated, very rural, and the game was shockingly bad. It had 10 point some million players just playing the heck out of it.
Wow.
And his dad had all kinds of health problems, and it had this enormous traffic. They knew it was valuable, but they just, they weren't from the culture where people were surrounded by people who knew what to do with it. So they hired a UBS banker to try to sell it. And I'm trying to remember the guy's name, John something. It's John Salter, really good guy. And he called me up and he goes, "Hey, Alex, I know you like publishing these games and working with all these young studios. Can I show you this thing, get some advice?" And so I met the kid, right? And Bill Clifford was really instrumental in this too. This is one of his great hero stories, frankly. Was we met this kid and said, "Yeah, how do you monetize this?" And I go, "You got all this traffic, but it's kind of doesn't convert to anything. So how can you sell it when it doesn't really make any money?" And so Bill Clifford got in there and jacked up the game with well-designed ad inventory. It's the first game where we said, "Hey, it's an adventure quest. Let's just put a character in it that is the advertising quest giver." And so we don't want to crap the site up with advertising. Let's just say, "Hey, if you want free stuff in the game, that's the shop you go to, and you'll give you the Sony motion picture sponsored adventure." And we put that in the game, and so then it wasn't all over the place. You had to go and volunteer to do it, and everybody who played it did. 96% of people go, "Yeah, I want to see some ads to get some free stuff," and so it was wildly successful. And I think I remember hearing the last I heard is it was generating like 35 million a year in ad revenue, which was a lot
Wow.
back then. And they decided not to sell the company because it was so profitable. And the kid's dad had serious heart problems. He like bought his dad a new heart, major quadruple bypass surgery, and then bought him a Rolls Royce and cash and so forth. So I remember hearing reports that the kid had done really, really well, just and provided for his family and made just a lot of cash. And it was a fascinating story, and there was a surprising number of those out on the internet who you never heard about because they never got VC and they never talked to the press, and they were just tenacious people that kind of just they had something they had to get out there, and even though it was hard or confusing, they made something successful. And so probably the number one thing I tell you is what you should believe is running a startup, being an entrepreneur is really immensely painful, and you're just going to get the crap kicked out of you for years. And it's going to see, and there's two things. The hardest thing about being an entrepreneur is you're always wrong about, and you want everybody, I want to be visionary, I want to know, be smarter than everybody else, know what's going to happen. And you'll feel elated. I just got the biggest deal ever. We're going to make it. And you're wrong. It's actually the worst thing to ever do, and you're an idiot for doing the deal. And you have the deal, you go, "Oh, this is the stupidest thing I've ever done. I'm the worst CEO. I'm going to lose the business." And it was the most successful decision you ever made. And you don't know until it's retrospect. And if you don't have the emotional fortitude to deal with this bizarre roller coaster, you're going to fail because you got to be tough. And so that's probably the number one thing I would tell people is if you go in there thinking it just goes great because all you hear is people bragging. It's a lie. They're full of shit, right? Because you got to sell that story. If you're raising VC, you can't show any self doubt in the valley. But believe me, those guys have a lot of rough days. And the number one thing that separates the winners from the losers is the people who just go, "I'm going to navigate it, find my way through, and keep going." All right. That was probably long-winded, but that's my best material.
Thank you, Alex. That's amazing. I appreciate the advice. And with that, I think we're going to wrap up. I'd like to thank our producer, Martika Ibarra, executive producer, our editor, Robert, the entire Architects of Imagination team, Alex, do you want to pimp social medias or the company name one more time?
Playcast.io. Go and visit the site. Just an alpha, so it's only for you serious streamers. Especially if you're a streamer, I'd love to get feedback. Join our Discord channel. I'm up there chatting with people, and try it out. And if you got features, things it needs, let us know because it's just four of us working away startup style, having a good time making the stuff, and we'd love to see people using it and telling us how to make it better. Thank you.
Thanks for joining me, Alex. This has been Architects of Imagination. I'd like to thank our executive producer, Martika Ibarra, our editor, Robert Burnett, and the entire Architects of Imagination team. Thank you guys for watching. This is Architects of Imagination.